very good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine. It's the last working day in the very beautiful week that, kick-started on Monday. I know some people are already saying, thank God it's Friday.
Do you understand? I'm really excited. Fridays have to be my favorite day.
Oh my goodness.
Honestly.
I wish I could be you right now. I wish I could be you. But unfortunately, I don't think this Friday is going to be a Friday like a usual Friday for you.
Definitely.
Because we have to, tweak a little bit of your schedule.
We'll be back here tomorrow.
Definitely. But of course, it's a beautiful morning to be alive, to be thankful. I don't know if you have showers in your area. If you do, please ensure that you wear clothes that, covers your body very well. And of course, will help you stay warm while you're going about your normal duty. We had to kickstart this morning with, some delicacies. The weekend people want to try new recipes, new cookouts, sit out, hang out, have fun with family, friends, and loved ones. Some persons, some group of persons who just don't want to go out this weekend, they just want to eat and sleep.
Call my name.
Exactly. They just want to eat and sleep. But it's a beautiful thing. I mean, when you've struggled, you've hustled from Monday to Friday, I definitely need one and a half day, because most people say, Sunday doesn't count. I mean, you're going to church, you're going to fellowship, you're trying to meet up with family, friends, just to catch up.
Preparing for Monday.
Exactly. So you don't really have much time on Sunday. So it's basically just Saturday that we have to rest. Sunday is for the Lord and preparing for Monday. And it's a beautiful thing. Of course, this is Rise and Shine, and we're here to talk Nigeria, the world, Africa, and all that concerns our collective, growth as a people. We urge you to join our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. My name is Francis Oyima-Edet.
And my name is Davina Praise Omang. And as usual, we're going to be here together through the hour of 9 a.m.
Yeah, we're going to be here together, and I love the company, by the way. Of course, very delightful to be here with you, of course. One thing that is happening across Nigeria, I mean, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu at the United Nations General Assembly, the meetings he's having on the sidelines has drawn a lot of attention. But just before we head to that, let's start with a flash story this morning. Very first flash story, we're starting from Kogi State, where the Labour Party presidential candidate, His Excellency Peter Obi, has officially presented Okume as the governorship candidate in the state. Of course, you know that Kogi State is one of the states that will be having its election. So, of course, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, had to do the honors of unveiling who is going to be the party's flag bearer in the state election. And of course, many have said the Labour Party has become the new baby, the new major party in Nigeria. Recall before now we used to have just the APC and the PDP. So if you're talking about the two major parties, it was those two parties. Now, after the just concluded general elections, you're now talking about the APC, the PDP, the Labour Party, and the NNPP at the national level.
Well, that's true. I feel like Labour Party, the relevance, the way we got relevance from Labour Party has to be like a miracle, because it was just through one election that Labour Party got that much relevance. And right now we see that in so many states, I remember during the elections at the polling unit when I went to cast my vote, some people were saying, you just vote Labour Party all through, just vote Labour Party, so it's giving Labour Party relevance, putting Labour Party on the map, and of course on the seat of competition between the PDP and APC, which were the two most popular parties in the country.
Well, the two most popular parties in the country are no longer the two. We now have four. And you recall that video is still trending. I think occasionally I still stumble upon it on social media. Different, sides to that particular video that surfaced during the counting of the ballot, papers, the vote that has been cast. LOP
71. No. That video trended for the longest on social media during the period of the elections.
It did. And it's still trending because occasionally you still find, Nigerian skid makers bringing out something similar, and then, of course, just trying to draw our minds to the things that happened during that election. Of course, it's been said that this is one of the wonderful things that has happened. I mean, getting Nigeria to a point where we move from just having two options, one of two options, to having more than one of two options. That means we have like 3, 4 options available, so Nigerians can choose from those 4 options. So it's a beautiful trend, that actually came as a result of the just concluded general election. But moving away from that to our second flash story this morning, recall yesterday we talked about the ambush in Imo State, where security officials were ambushed in the line of their duty. Of course, we saw that the military allegedly raided some communities in Imo State yesterday. Allegedly, because there's been no official report from the military, saying they were the ones responsible. And of course, the spreaders of the information said the move and the way that the personnel stormed the community was like a military, and there were no clear evidences that, okay, these were military personnel in military uniforms carrying out official duties. But of course, we see that the federal government has vowed to revenge and retaliate the ambush and the killing of the Nigerian security forces, as far as the incident in Imo State is concerned. But there's an interesting twist to that this morning. We see that IPOB has distanced itself from that killing.
I mean, who would want to put themselves in the mix of all of this? Because as we notice, this story is taken really seriously.
It's a serious conversation. I mean, for the longest time, we've had conversations about IPOB and their agitation in the Southeast. We've talked about the fact that there's consistent sit-at-home order, until recently that we saw the Southeastern states governors come together and say, okay, we have had enough of the sit-at-home order and what he's doing to our economy as a state, as a region. And so, of course, we've seen different moves from the Southeastern governors, also appealing to the federal government to ensure that, sit-at-home is no longer a thing that is being observed in the Southeast. But of course, there's also been a call from the National Assembly calling on the federal government to extradite Simon Ekpa and bring him back to Nigeria to face, charges for all the atrocities that has been perpetrated by him directly and indirectly through his, order to his followers back here in Nigeria. Nigerians are wondering what exactly is the problem. Why, after that, directive by the the National Assembly, we're yet to see comments or movement by the federal government, and of course, in relationship with the Finnish government to ensure that Simon Ekpa is extradited back to Nigeria. But getting to see the IPOB, family, or should we call them the IPOB separatist group, coming out to distance themselves, it spirals a whole lot of conversation. One, it shows that in the midst of this agitation, there is a deliberate acknowledgement of the fact that the federal government is still the federal government of Nigeria, and that you cannot contend with, the federal might when it comes to military power, when it comes to going to war and confrontation. And so we've also seen that the embattled leader of the IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, is still in detention as we speak, has said, people who are loyal to him should no longer, observe the sit-at-home order. They should not be involved in killing, destruction of lives and properties. And that is the way to go, because yes, it is within your rights to seek to separate yourself from Nigeria because you feel the country is not treating your region right, is not doing what needs to be done. You're being marginalized, you're being treated badly in terms of resource allocation and sharing. You're not getting your equals and all of those considerations. But the way to go has to follow through due process that, will not necessarily lead to the spilling of human lives. Recall yesterday being World Peace, we were talking about the fact that as a community, collectively, as individuals in our respective families and communities, we all have our responsible abilities to play. We all have our own roles, and it all starts with intentional decisions and actions towards ensuring that you do not hurt the next person.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, imagine just yesterday was International Day of Peace, that's World Peace Day, and we had this conversation. I like the fact that they have also made it clear that, okay, we have no hand in this, because the truth of the matter is, based on their history, they would be the first persons we would ask and point fingers to. So if this just means that they are gradually but surely taking a step in the right direction, that's, distancing themselves from destruction of lives and property, I feel like this is the best way for their voices to be heard. But now we just ask, who was really responsible for this attack? Who were the people really responsible, since the IPOB now have distanced themselves from these killings that happened in Imo State?
Well, of course, it's a very big question that we can't answer. But one thing is certain: when there is insecurity in the land, there are other criminal elements who would want to seize that opportunity to act. We've seen people disguise as certain group. It's basically a tactics in in war-torn areas or in areas where there is high space of insecurity. That is what gave birth to terrorist organizations and separatist group, making it a new normal. So where there is an attack, and just to make sure that everybody knows where it's coming from, the terrorist group would take the claims. Those who actually masterminded the attack would say, okay, we have been responsible for this, or we are responsible for this, and those who were not part of it would also try as much as possible to distance themselves because they want to know. And one funny trend that comes as a result of that is that each of these terrorist organizations all have their modus operandi, and they all have what they're agitating for, what they're aiming for, what they're preaching for. And so these things makes it a lot easier for us to understand or grasp who is behind what. But when people in the guise of the insecurity in a particular region, some of the criminal elements takes advantage of that scenario to play out, it's very difficult for us to trace it back. And if the reports that military personnel allegedly raided some communities, burned houses, is true or is anything to go by, we'll also have to look at the repercussion of such incidences happening. I mean, you're ambushing a military, team on their way to their official assignment in a community. So questions are going to be asked. What was the community doing? The community should definitely know who these criminal elements are. And in the situation that they do not know who they are, then it raises a lot of questions. Could it have been people from the community itself? And one of the things that will always be the aftermath effect of that is that innocent people within that community are going to be the ones who suffer, because in the event that the soldiers say, okay, we are going to raid the community to seek out those who killed the men and women of the Nigerian armed forces, the common man in that community who had no hand in it is going to be the one suffering.
True, I have to say. Well, now we just look forward to see who actually performed such reckless attacks, because in a statement released yesterday by its spokesman, Emma Powerful, IPOB said such reckless attacks and shedding of blood are not needed to achieve Biafra freedom in our territory. While distancing itself from the attack, IPOB claimed the federal government knows those behind this latest attack on security personnel. That's interesting. He said they shouldn't feign ignorance or claim to be surprised because they are working with the perpetrators of that unnecessary attack in order to blackmail IPOB and Nnamdi Kanu. What do you think about that statement? That's an interesting, should I say, accusation?
That's a bold accusation. Well, it can also happen. When you talk about political maneuvering, you talk about manipulations, you talk about interest, you get to see that there are some persons who would want to do just anything to stay on top, or would want to do just anything to keep a region unstable. And security expert will tell you, for every act of insecurity, there is somebody somewhere gaining from the bloodshed, the bloodbath, the war that is going on, the crises. I mean, there is somebody sitting somewhere, eating fat and feeding fat from that crisis. So for these people, manipulation is the top of their game. Trying to incite the people against government is the top of their game. Trying to ensure that, just when you feel like, okay, the government is having a grab, just when you feel like, okay, we are finally putting a pause to these acts of insecurity, you get to see a different twist, churning out. I recall some time back we saw some of the boldest act of criminality or spades of attack on Christians. We saw what happened at the war community, where armed personnel stormed the church, killing people in broad daylight. We've seen different spades. I mean, all of these things points to the fact that the criminal just find a way to make it look like they have a very heavy presence. And I think I agree with the military or the Nigerian Armed Forces at this point, where the media needs to play a lot more role in ensuring that we report more the onslaught on the parts of the military against this criminal element. We report more of the wins by the federal government and agents of government than we report, things that this, non-state actors are actually, doing to the livelihood of Nigerians. But of course, moving away from that, we know that for this week, there's been a lot of going back and forth as far as cultism is concerned. And we see that as a result of the going back and forth, particularly in Sagamu area called Clash, we see that the DSS has arrested Ogun lawmakers and 6 others over the cold clash. Now, according to the information at our disposal, it is said that 6 members who were part of the cold clash that allegedly claimed 8 lives, found were hidden, or should we say, found secret hiding place in the house of a serving assembly member. And then, of course, the DSS, through intelligence information, were able to apprehend those cultists who were involved in that cold clash, and of course, the House member. And this goes to a lot of conversations that Nigerians have been asking. For a cultist to be so bold, to feel like he's untouchable, there is somebody in position of power and authority that is backing that cultist. Yeah. And then, of course, there are conversations from the PDP alleging that, the leadership of the state is witch hunting or politically hunting other individuals who might not be in terms with the state leadership. But then you ask, how does a cultist find his way into a serving member of the House of Assembly, of the National Assembly, when these persons know that 8 lives have been gone already, and this is cultism that has been prescribed by different states in this country?
Well, like you have said, for somebody to have that level of boldness, that level of courage, it means that there is a backing somewhere that we do not see. And I'm trying to almost relate this story to the demise of the singer Mobad, the people who fingers are pointed to right now. The level of comfort that they portray just shows that somehow, somewhere, there may be some sort of backing on the higher grounds that people do not see. But I feel like cultism is not even a conversation that at this point in our lives as Nigerians, and as at this point in a nation where we're struggling so hard to build the economy and we're looking at ways to uplift the effects, side effects of the fuel subsidy removal, I feel like cultism isn't even something that should make the trends of stories or make the headlines these days. But look at where we find ourselves today.
Well, of course, the operative of the Department of State Security, DSS in Ogun State, arrested member of the State House of Assembly, Honorable Damilare Bello Mohammed, for his alleged involvement in the rival secret cold clashes that occurred in Sagamu town, where 8 persons were killed. As at last weekend, the lawmaker was recently elected on the platform of the People's Democratic Party to represent Sagamu State Constituency 1. Was arrested alongside 5 other suspected cultists allegedly involved in the cult violence. The 5 other suspects have been listed according to the information. Of course, we see that in a statement issued by Leka Adeniran, the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor Dakpo Biodu, said the DSS had since Wednesday tracked the 6 suspected cultists to the official residence of the lawmaker, where he was allegedly providing shelter to the cultists. It is disclosed that the suspects are presently undergoing interrogations in DSS custody after many dangerous weapons, including guns, were recovered from them. So it's a whole new twist to the story that unveils the level of corruption that still goes on within our political space. I mean, how does a serving member of the House house criminal element? Are you trying to protect your constituents? Is it a way of saying, okay, they're my constituents, and then in as much as I know they've been a part of criminal activities, I still would want to shield them? How does that even, sit out before the law? I mean, these are persons who are responsible for making the law, people who should know better, who should know best how to work around when things like this happen. But you find persons doing this, and then you see political parties trying to whip up sentiment and make it look like it's a political witch hunting. But there are certain questions Nigerians would ask, the people of Sagamu would ask. If the cultists had no affiliations to you, why are they? Why are they in your house? Because it would take a cultist who knows that this is the person who has his or her back to run to that person. It would take a cultist who knows that, okay, these are members of my cult group at the higher rank to run to you. So why didn't they run to other, House members in the state? Why you? That's the questions Nigerians are asking at this point.
Well, I feel like these kind of things we often see them in our communities, our local communities, where there's like how will I put it? Should I call it the king of boys? And the truth of the matter is, with his position as a member of the House of Assembly, this is something that he should have distanced himself from, at least to set an example and to avoid questions and situations like this. But the truth of the matter is, with investigations underway, I'm sure that all of our questions will be answered soon and effectively.
Well, we do hope that all of our questions get answered soon and effectively, and we also hope that the DSS is able to investigate this matter to a logical conclusion, and of course the perpetrators, the people who have been involved in the bloodbath that happened in Sagamu, actually gets to face the full wrath of the law. I mean, it's gotten to a point in Nigeria where we need to understand that cultism and its related activities are not something to be tolerated. I think it was within the course of the week that Governor Dapo Biodun said they were going to look into, giving the death penalty for people involved in cult activities. And Nigerians say, yes, it's about time we get to that point across the respective states of the Federation. Because if you look at some of the criminal activities happening in a community, even in the rural communities, they're being masterminded by, young people who have been conscripted into cultism. And then I recall some time back visiting my village, and my mom was like, please, oh, don't wear red, or don't wear yellow, don't wear this, or don't wear that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hello, mommy, what is it? But I say, if you wear this group will catch you. If you wear this group will say you're not, why are you flying their color? And I'm like, hello, excuse me. The colors were created for every man on earth to use. So why should what I wear become a problem to you? I just couldn't understand that. And then it turns out these little children who have gone nowhere, who know nothing about life, were busy harassing people. And you just sit and you find a group of 5-10 boys walking in and dragging a young man out, say he has not paid his dues. And I'm like, hello? Dues in a village. So you find children who have not gotten to school, children who are struggling, whose families are struggling to eat, beginning to join cultism and beginning to perpetrate a lot of criminal activities. And some of them go the extra miles of stealing, because when you are in a village, you don't have a job, you're not, going out to be involved in manual labor. So how do you pay your dues? Stealing. And that has been one of the reasons we have a high rate of, criminal activities within the community. So it's about time we put our feet down. I know in Akwa Ibom State, cultism had long been proscribed, but there are still questions surrounding the implementation. There are still questions bordering on how effective that ban has been. There's still questions as to what the security agencies are doing. But beyond the question about security and the government forces, we should also look at what we need to do. I think one of the conversations that spiral out of this is that parents have lost touch with what their children are doing. Parents have lost touch with training their children in the ways of the Lord, in quote, for those who believe in God. And then, of course, if you're not among those who believe in God or the Christian faith, Nigerians would say parents have lost touch with the ideals of parental upbringing as far as the African way is concerned. So parents no longer train up their children the way they should go. Parents no longer pay attention to what their children are doing, especially with this era of social media. I mean, how does a parent, for instance, sit at home and knows that his 18-year-old child is not working, and then that child comes back with a phone worth 250,000, and you're not asking questions?
True.
How do you sit down and see that your child who is not working is coming home on a daily basis, bringing in very expensive things, wearing clothes that you didn't buy for him or her, and then definitely from the look of things you see that those are very high costing clothes and accessories, and yet a parent does nothing, asks no questions, tries nothing to reprimand the child. This is the conversations that is ongoing, and we need to get to that point in Nigeria where I think it was one of the guys we had on Rise and Shine some time back that spoke about communal upbringing. The way our parents used to be, that it was not the duty of one's parents necessarily to raise a child. So if your child went out and did something stupid, it was the right of a mother or father in that community to spank your child and put him or her back in the right way.
Yeah.
But today, can you try that with somebody's child? Even when the mother knows that the child is wrong, it's still going to be a problem. It's going to be a fight of women or a fight of men just because a child is being corrected. And that decay, that moral decay, has been one of the major contributors to what we're seeing play out in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I recall that say the child is not the child of the parents, but the child of the compound, the child of the community. But these days, you notice that even parents themselves do not want to discipline their children. They do not feel it necessary. It started in the schools. I remember back home when you'd go to schools and the teacher would want to reprimand, and the principal or the authorities of the school would say, "No, you don't beat children in this school." And I feel like that is where it all started. But the truth of the matter is we need to look out not just for our children, but for the next child. And then there are people who will not want to do that because I don't know what the mother is going to say. There was a story that was trending sometime on Twitter a while back. A woman was having a conversation just like we're having now with a couple of people, and she mentioned how the other day she was on the phone with her housekeeper, and she heard the housekeeper, while being on the phone, trying to reprimand her daughter for doing something. She was like, "Okay, don't do this," and the woman said she overheard her daughter call her housekeeper some sort of name that was insulting, and the woman said she asked the housekeeper, "Why are you still on the line? End the call and give her a spank. She deserves that," So there are parents who know that it is necessary. I feel like at the end of the day, even as parents, we reap the fruits of our labor. If you invest time into bringing up your children in the right way, disciplining them when it is necessary. Like these days, like you said, there are people who will come back home with phones worth 300,000 naira, and you hear parents say things like, "Where is my own?" I have witnessed a situation like that. A girl of 20 years who was in the university, she came home with one of these products, these phones that are really expensive. And the mother was like, "Where is my own now?" And I witnessed the situation. I'm like, this is interesting. Mommy, come and learn. But at the end of the day, these are things that we should look into as parents, as aunties, as uncles, as neighbors. Because bringing up a child is a job for the entire community.
Well, it's definitely a job for the entire community, but will Nigerians, will Africans get to learn to get back to doing the things the way it used to be? Yes, I know there have been conversations about the fact that some people within the community who probably had grudges with the family or with the parents would go the extra mile to not just correct the child, but to vent their aggressions and their anger on the child. But those instances were very insignificant if you consider the incidences that happen within the respective communities. You cannot say because of those few that we're going to move away, or we should completely throw away those practices that help build some of the most amazing men and women that we have as parents or who are still living today. And that, to a large extent, if we could get to that point, would drastically help rebuild the moral fibers of the society. Take, for instance, now you're talking about late. I think I've had series of encounter where it seems like it's a new normal. The parents who have female children, particularly the ones that have fine faces such as yourself, would literally believe that, okay, from 16, 18, that girl should be able to not just fend for herself, but also fend for the family. And then you ask a question. Your girl child is still in probably secondary school or just, getting into the university or a college. And then as a parent, your responsibility is supposed to be to train that child until that child is able to graduate and get a job and be able to fend for herself, be able to serve to a point where she can also, begin to give back to the family. But how do we get to a point where parents from the onset of the work go before the child state is even sharp enough to stand, on her own? She's being expected to fend for not just herself, but also for the family. Sometimes you find younger ones looking up to, a teenage girl, and then you ask the question, what are the parents doing? But then, this has gone to a point where parents have inculcated the habit of looseness, the habit of criminal activities, the mindset of believing that it doesn't matter what you do to make money, as long as you make the money.
Money is made, yeah.
Yeah, so as long as you make the money, there is nothing wrong with that. I think it was just yesterday I saw a post from Davido, what's his name again, Harrison and Flavor, that just surrounding the mobile system, a lot of young up and coming artists, a lot of people flood their inbox asking questions, declaring intentions that they're ready to do anything. They want to join the Illuminati. They want to do this. They want to do that. They want to be part of cult groups that will, help push them to the forefront, put them on the spotlight. They're willing to do just anything for fame, for wealth, for stardom. And then you ask, you're just about 16. You're just about 18. Just about 23. Where is the rush for hammering, for being a multi-millionaire when you're just about 20, when you're just about 23? We're not saying it's wrong for you to, be a multi-millionaire at 20, at 18. If you're doing a legitimate business, maybe your parents happen to be people who have given you the background and gave you the opportunity, and you started investing, or you became an investor really early, and you're able to make the right decisions. There's absolutely nothing wrong in you being a millionaire, in your 20s, early 20s. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I cannot understand as a person, even as I said, is the craze for hammering in Nigeria. It's like literally nobody, most young guys, most young ladies don't want to follow the process.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. There's a video that has actually been trending this week as well regarding the Mohbad incident, where he had an interview and he said, when they asked him, final words, what do you have to say to people who are listening to the program? And he said he doesn't want anybody to rush. He said that. He said, I don't think it's necessary for you to rush. Take it one step at a time. Follow due process. Those were his words. And he says, he went ahead to say, I'm going to try to quote him. He says, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should not be hardworking, but, take it one step at a time, because when you rush, you find yourself in places that you should not be normally, just because you want to, blow, like we say, because you want to hammer. So I feel like maybe he must have said that out of a place of experience. And the truth of the matter is, as much as we say there is no time to waste time, it is better for you to take it a step at a time than for you to find yourself in a place where it is hard for you to leave. I mean, hear people saying they want to join the Illuminati. Do you have any idea what that takes, or what that could be, or what that could mean for you and for your future? It is just insane. The crave for power and wealth and fame, it's out of this world.
Well, the craze is just something out of this world. And talking about Mohbad, the demise of the 27-year-old singer has been one very controversial story that is still developing, and I don't think we're going to see an end to it anytime soon. But we do hope that the Lagos State government, the DSS, gets to the root of the matter. Just yesterday, the disturbing footages of videos that suffers. I mean, the Nigerian police force exhumed his body, and it seems like there were blood stains inside the coffin.
Yeah.
And then you ask, do people who die still have blood?
Still bleed, exactly.
That's a big question. I mean, and if he was actually dead, why do we still have blood stains? I know that I've been around people who have died. I don't even know if medical experts will have an explanation to it. Maybe we'll get to talk to them on Rise and Shine sometime next week to find out if there's a possibility, because we'll also have to consider the circumstances that Mohbad was buried just within, inside of 48 hours of his demise.
Yeah.
And then that has also raised a lot of questions. Why was he buried inside of 48 hours of his demise? That's a question that needs to be answered. And then there have also been reports that he was, forcefully put into the coffin because the coffin was not, long enough. And I'm asking a question. Nigerians are asking, how is it that somebody who has gotten to that spotlight, has that level of exposure and has the kind of money that at least we could say the family, the wife could afford a proper, a befitting coffin to give him a burial?
Yeah, let me add to what this story has for this part. So you know that Mohbad died like today, and he was buried the next day. So it was like almost immediately. So people were so upset when the video was trending, where we noticed that it was like they had to break his neck for him to fit into the casket that was used to bury him. And even at that, they still had difficulty closing it. That was why people were even able to get that footage, which is so disturbing. But that was why people were even able to get that footage showing that, his neck was either broken or forcefully bent. That happened. And then when people were so upset on social media, calling whoever made the casket out, calling the family out, the so-called person who made the casket came out to say that, people shouldn't blame him, because the family came and said they needed one urgently, and Mohbad is tall. So that was the explanation that he gave, that they wanted one as urgently as possible. Mohbad is tall. They didn't let him take measurements to make a new one. They just picked one that was already there. So the questions Nigerians are asking right now is, if that is the case, why were they so much in a hurry to put this man 6 feet under the ground? Why was his father so much in a hurry? The questions spread across so much that, they had to go and get an interview from the father, and he said that in the Yoruba land, you have to, if a child dies before the parents, you don't have to waste time to bury the child. You have to bury the child as quickly as possible. So that was his explanation, although Nigerians still do not buy it. And concerning the blood that was found, of course, Nigerians have asked all the doctors on social media to come and respond. And we got a few responses saying that, since his neck was broken, it is possible he had an injury. We do not know. They're saying it's possible blood came out from there. And since the blood did not have access to oxygen, that is why the blood still remained red in color. But the gist remains that at the end of the day, an autopsy will be able to tell us why everything happened the way it did.
Well, of course, we do expect a lot. We see that the senators asked the police to deepen investigations to ensure the circumstances surrounding the death of Ileri Oluwa Oladimeji Aloba unveiled. The Senate vowed to ensure that anyone found responsible for his death is brought to book. Chairman Senate Committee on Creative Economy Elisha Abo said this yesterday when he led a delegation including Tonto Dike and Iyabo Ojo on a condolence visit to Mrs. Adebose Olumuyi, that is Mohbad's mother, in Lekki, Lagos State. Of course, according to Abo, the National Assembly feels it is very important to condole with the family considering the controversy surrounding Mohbad's death. Now, it's a beautiful thing to see that the National Assembly has taken interest. I think yesterday I also saw a story that the National Assembly is going to look into creating a law or a commission that will be saddled with the responsibility to handle dispute between record labels and their signees. And that is something that could change the narrative. True. Because we've seen, I know that way back when I wanted to go into music back then, I know that then one of the things that even in Akwa Ibom State, people will tell you if you're in the state you can't hammer until you go out. It goes down to record labels, it goes down to music promoters, it goes down to a lot of the business aspect of the music industry. But then if you have to compare that time with now, a lot of Nigerian artists, a lot of up and coming artists should know by the level of information available on the internet that you don't necessarily need a record label to hammer.
Exactly.
Now there are social there are social media platforms. You can project yourself. There is internet everywhere. There are digital platforms where you can on your own open an account with them and have your songs on this platform, have your songs promoted, and that way anything that comes to you or that accrues to your song gets directly to you. But most people are not even willing to be patient enough to follow the process. I know, for instance, Mohbad, initially started out music with the money he was making from carpentry and all of that, and people were saying maybe if he had stayed stuck to following through the process without joining the Malian records, he probably would still be alive now. But then you can also blame up and coming celebrity or up and coming artists. Everybody wants to be on the spotlight. I mean, you literally, if you look at somebody who has made music, for instance, you've made music for 15 years, 20 years, and you're nowhere close to the spotlight. And then you're seeing somebody who comes with you with a juicy opportunity. Most person will want to, be part of that. But one very critical conversation that has surfaced from this, apart from the move by the National Assembly, for me, would be that following the advice of the likes of Davido, following the advice of the likes of Harrison, the likes of Flavor, up and coming artists need to understand that there is a process and you have to follow that process. There is no need to try and jump the gun. There is no need to try and outsmart the next person. And we have to also be realistic that most people who own record labels are out for exploitations. I know that just recently in Akwa Ibom that there is this amazing band of just female players. They do amazingly great, and they have been looking for somebody to invest money in them and push them forward. And guess what? A few deals have come their way. But because these persons are all graduates, they are all enlightened, when they sit down to look at the terms of the MOUs, the terms of the agreement that the record labels are pushing forward, they know that at the end of the day, they're just going to be slaves. So you are the band, you own the band, you create the music, and the job of the record label is just to market the music and market your brand. But guess what? The record label, through the document presented, will own the royalty to the music that they have no idea.
True.
They did not create.
True.
So in the event that there is a misunderstanding between you and the record label, they can take your music, take your song, and take your brand.
True.
And so return you back to nothing.
That is exactly what happened to Mobad, if we look at the story, because even after Mobad left the record label, he still, the fight was still going on, trying to get his royalties back. News was brought that some of the songs for members of the Malian Music record label were written by him, originally presented or produced by him, and then they were given to other artists, Naira Marley being one of them. So he was still fighting to get some of his royalties after leaving the record label. I have to agree with 100% with what you have said this morning, because there are some people who feel like for them to make it in the industry, they need to get that platform. It is true that the platform is necessary, but there are people who have also on their own stood on their grounds, worked hard enough, and still gotten it. At the end of the day, I feel like it is just being careful, because we have record labels like the Mavins. We call Mavins record label the Ajebo record label of Nigeria, because you notice that in Maven Records, it's almost like everything is done for them. They have AR managers, PR managers, have producers, and it looks like a healthy system, right? So it's just about being careful. Right now, Nigerians are even raising eyebrows and questions about another member of the Malian record label who is called Zinoliski. They're saying, Zeno joined the label looking healthy. He wasn't
now looking sick.
Exactly. No, he looks like a lot of contour and foundation has been applied to give him smaller cheekbones. But a lot of questions have been raised, and I'm happy to see that Nigerians are taking this as seriously as possible. We're making it heard. I mean, now the National Assembly has decided to be a part of this. It just means that our voices are being heard, and we're taking a step in the right direction. Even if sadly, yesterday they had the candlelight procession in Lagos State in memory of him, and we noticed that there were some issues after they had left. But trust Nigerians to be stubborn. We noticed that I don't know whether it was the police, but tear gas everywhere and the rest. But I just like the fact that our voices are being heard.
Well, Nigerians can, take matters into their hands. And one thing that I would always say that social media has done is, give Nigerians the extra power to call government officials and hold people accountable. And the conversation cannot be rested unless we get back to the point that the Nigerian police force did not even rise up to its responsibility when Mobad had initially sent in the petition that his life was being threatened.
Exactly.
So the Nigerian police force also has a serious role to play. And I love the fact that his wife or his baby mama has reached out to the likes of the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, to seek justice for the demise of Mobad. And I'd like to believe that Falana is going to take up this cause, and other human rights organizations and civil society organizations in Nigeria should join hands to ensure that justice is served. I know that Naira Marley has been called out severally, and I've seen Tonto DK calling out Naira Marley and telling him Nigerians know what he's done, and he's going to, face the full wrath of the law, regardless of how much wealthy or how wealthy he believes himself is, or how highly connected he believes himself is. And that's the reality we need to also push forward. No matter how wealthy you are, yes, I might say money is the wealth or the lord or makes one the king of this world. But it gets to a point where the high and mighty, the movers and shakers, will want to distance themselves from you when they know that the dirt that is circling around you, when it gets to them, is also going to be damage to themselves.
Yeah.
So it gets to that point in everybody's life when you feel like you are the God and you can do and undo. But as far as this time is concerned, there are mere speculations, there are allegations, and only the investigations by the police, the DSS, and a host of others who have been brought in is going to tell Nigerians, what exactly transpired. But we do hope that Mobad's death becomes an end to the injustice and criminal activities, that is on the go, undertone in the music industry. And one conversation that has also come up is the fact that the music industry is dark, and the entertainment industry generally. That in fact,
Yeah.
all aspects of, there is no sector that doesn't have its own dark side. But if you're venturing into these sectors, you need to venture in with your eyes open,
Yeah.
with your instinct intact, and then know where you go, who you associate with, know the papers you are paying
You're
your
signing.
signatures on,
Exactly.
because you can be signing your life away within a twinkle of an eye without necessarily knowing
Yeah.
that that's what you're doing.
That's true. I have to agree with you. Our friends are younger ones. They need to be more alert when it comes to, signing signature. There's a picture right now of when Mohbad signed the signature to be a part of Malian music. And people are saying if only he knew that, he was signing his life away, signing his freedom away, that they are sure he would not have signed. But he did, and it is sad that his death is what is becoming an eye-opener for us. But I feel like, as he called himself, the light, Imole, I hope that his light will shine bright and teach people and encourage people that, it is not too much to ask as many questions as possible if you want to belong.
Definitely, it's not too much. In fact, as a matter of urgency, before you pen your signature, before you belong, before you become part of any establishment, any organization, any business venture, please ensure that you take out time to read. They say Nigerians don't read terms and conditions, but please take out time to read terms and conditions on every item, every piece of document. If you do not understand it, because we know that some of the terminology, some of the jargon, some of the phrases used when it comes to legal documents can only be understood by lawyers.
By legal
Please,
practitioners.
yes, get a lawyer to take out time to really study those documents and advise you accordingly. And when a lawyer actually advises you, please pay attention to those advice, because they could be the difference between you staying alive, between you being able to earn your sacrifices, and losing all of it at a twinkle of an eye. But this is where we're going to pause the conversations and head out to the news brief next, where Mary Joseph is standing by to take us round. When we come back, Rise and Shine continues. Stay with us.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
As of government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in counting.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum. Live from Uyo, I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with a report that President Bola Tinubu has told prospective investors that Nigeria has a unique mix of opportunities that they would not find elsewhere. He also urged them not to be dissuaded by the negative narratives propagated in some quarters. Tinubu said at the Nigeria-US Executive Business Roundtable just after he rang the closing bell at the NASDAQ headquarters in New York City. Away from that, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, has signed up a participant in the United Nations Global Compact, thereby becoming the first state-owned oil company to join the global initiative. This was announced via the profile of the company on X, formerly known as Twitter. The Group Chief Executive Officer, NNPCL, Mele Kyari, signed the letter of commitment signifying NNPC Limited's participation in the UN Global Compact. Back here, the Akwa Ibom State government has lined up a number of activities to mark the annual celebration as it clocks 36 years on September 23, 2023. The schedule of events released by the Ministry of Information indicated that the celebration commenced yesterday, September 21st, with the kickoff of the Governor's Cup tournament at the Uyo Township Stadium. The release also indicated that on Friday evening, September 22nd, journalists in Akwa Ibom will be hosted to the media party at the Government House, while 10 a.m. of Saturday, September 23rd, has been slated for the flag-off of the Made in Akwa Ibom Trade Fair at the Ibom LED headquarters, formerly known as Ibom E-Library in Uyo, noting that in midday of the same day, a new paramount ruler will be installed at the traditional rulers' chambers along Wellington Bassey Way in Uyo before a banquet at the State Banquet Hall by 7 p.m. We head straight now to the foreign scene, where one of Ukraine's staunchest allies, Poland, has said that it is no longer supplying weapons to its neighbors amid a diplomatic dispute over Kyiv's grain exports. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said Poland's focus was instead on defending itself with more modern weapons, but the country's President Andrzej Duda later said the comment had been misinterpreted in the worst possible way. Duda said it was only new Polish weapons that would not be sent. And finally, in sport, Liverpool came from behind to beat Lask Linz as they made a winning start to their Europa League campaign. Max midfielder Florian Flecker struck a brilliant opener from the edge of the area on 19 minutes from the Austrians. Darwin Núñez equalized from the penalty spot after Luis Diaz was fouled before Diaz himself scored the winner from debutant Ryan Gravenberch cross. We have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Francis and Davina on standby. Do have a wonderful weekend.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover for the lapses in counting.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Glad to welcome you back. This is still Rise and Shine coming to you live on Spectrum TV, and we're beaming live from you, the very beautiful capital city of Akwa Ibom State. Of course, we encourage you to join us across our social media platform, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng, to be part of the conversations. Not forgetting that we are talking Nigeria, and in talking Nigeria this morning, we touched light on a few issues, starting from the Labour Party presidential candidate presenting Okeme as a governorship candidate, of course, for the Kogi 2023 elections. We also talked about the fact that IPOB has condemned the killing of security operatives in Imo State, and as they stand itself for that particular incident. We see that DSS has arrested Ogun lawmaker and 6 others over the Sagamu coal clash. Of course, we're also talking about the fact that as a result of that, the PDP has alleged that Governor Biodun is harassing opposition using the DSS. We talked about also the circumstances surrounding Mobasid's demise and the fact that the National Assembly has waded into the matter. Of course, the police has yesterday exhumed the body, and autopsies are expected, and Nigerians are waiting to see where the investigation is going to turn. Different conversations spanning out from that as far as the NY's demise of Mobad is concerned, and the conversations about record labels and their signees that is going to be sorted out also by a move by the National Assembly to make sure there's a piece of legislation in place to address some of the challenges that may come as a result of a record label having issues, having fallouts with their signees. But those are some of the highlights that we've talked about this morning, and you can catch up on our social media platforms if you didn't miss out. But of course, we are heading to national dailies, where we'll be bringing you the major headlines across Nigerian newspapers. Of course, the national dailies this morning, we're starting with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch newspaper, the kicker there says federal government may pay 1.68 trillion naira fuel subsidy. Marketers forecast 900 naira per litre. That story is on page 2 of the Punch newspaper this morning. You also see as a rider day, petrol price to rise again as naira nears 1,000 naira. Crude oil hits $95. Ipman warns operators commend government for subsidy proposal, while civil society organizations oppose fresh subsidy. That story is on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the front page of Punch, academic record, delay Atiku's request. Tinubu tells US court. Of course, we see legal team 6 review of ruling ex-VP's aid alleges cover-ups. That's on page 22 of the Punch newspaper. We also see on the front page of Punch, currency in circulation rises to 2.7 trillion naira. CBN report. That's on page 25 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the front page of Punch this morning, we see coal clashes, relocate to Sagamu. Abiodun tells security heads. That's on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Still on the front page of Punch this morning, pathologists conclude autopsies on Mobat's corpse. Police awaits result. The story is on page 4. I remain loyal. Forgive me, Shaibu begs Obasiki. That's on page 12. An interesting twist there. Those are the major stories you'll find this morning on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Of course, there's also a picture news story about the candlelight procession held in Lagos State for the demise Mobat on the front page of Punch. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of Punch this morning.
All right, now we'll be moving straight to the stories that made it to the cover page of the Vanguard newspaper. The first story here is the fresh strike looms as NLC's ultimatum expires today. And on the right of that story, we have that NLC leaders meet next week as federal government gets desperate to avert action. This story can be found on page 5. We also have Shaibu apologizes to Obaseki over feud seeks forgiveness. The story can be found on page 10. Tinubu to United Nations, I fought for democracy, determined to prove it can provide death. That's on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. We also have the police exhume Mohbad's body, conduct autopsy. That story is on page 6. Again, gunmen murder ASP inspector in Enugu police patrol ambush. This story can be found on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. And poor economy, insecurity, worrisome. This one came from Muslim leaders, and it also made it to the cover page of the Vanguard newspaper.
Of course, next up this morning on Delhi Spotlight, we're heading out to the front page of Delhi Trust newspaper. Of course, Delhi Trust is the very first story there. The kicker says Naira grosses 1,000 Naira per dollar in black market. Cost of living will increase, says experts, and money laundering orders feeling pressure. That's in page 4 of Delhi Trust. IPI6 probe as corpse of Zamfara journalists found in Sokowe. Tinubu to UN, take more actions on poverty, terrorism than talking. Of course, we must push through the storm, sacked Governor Yusuf tells appointees. Those stories you can find on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, precisely on page 5 and page 3 and page 10 respectively. Kano leaves curfew, residents lament hardship. That's on page 3 of the Punch newspaper. Of course, we see Mohbad's demise, police complete autopsy. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of Punch, Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Now we'll be moving to the Nation newspaper, and the story that made it biggest here says Tinubu woos Nigerians in US to invest back home. And on the right of that story, we have overcome setbacks, adopt new mindset, president advises. We also have that Shoibu's office at Government House relocated. We have that on page 5. On the right of that story, it says, I'm sorry, Deputy Governor begs the governor. Also on the Nation, we have that 22 lawmakers okay to move to impeach Ondo Deputy Governor. The story is found at page 25. On the right of that story, it says, bank raises 13 billion naira for subsidy paying palliatives. Sagamu police arrest Ogun lawmaker and 6 others. The stories can be found on page 7 and page 25 respectively. We have that Bazoum asks ECOWAS court to free him. That also made it to the cover page. And Poland opposes Germany on UN Security Council seat. The story can be found on page 5 of the Nation news paper.
Of course, still on Daily Spotlight this morning. Next up is the Nigerian Tribune. And on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, we see the kicker there says, question persists over petrol subsidy. FG running COSI deregulation. Ipman crude oil price. Forex further impact diesel price. That's on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune. Tinubu woos investors in USA invest in Nigeria without fear, he says. That's on page 23. Of course, we also see on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, Mohbad's body exhumed, autopsy done, nurse in police custody. That is on page 27. Tribunal upholds Mba's victory as Enugu Governor Matwang knows fate today. Page 12 has the story. Though Deputy Governor begs Obaseki for forgiveness, says, I am missing my governor. That's on page 4. We also see on the front page of Nigerian Tribune this morning, CBN postponed September NPC meeting indefinitely. That's on page 7. Sagamu call clash, Ogun lawmakers 6 orders in DSS net. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
And finally, we have the Daily Times newspaper, and we have Obaseki chases Deputy Owe, reallocates office to private group. On the right of that story, Deputy Governor now operates from personal residence. no end in sight to saga. We have another story here. Labour Party Enugu gubernatorial candidate to appeal tribunal verdict confirming Mba's victory. That story is on page 5. Security expert Lord CBN investigator Obaze. That's found on page 5 as well. Lawyer gives Adeleke 10 days to settle judge's allowances or face legal action. That story is equally found on page 5. We have that 3 core members freed in Zamfara and redeployed to FCT. The story is brought to us by the NYSC, and the writer of that story says traditional rulers, security agents, and others involved to push to release others. This particular story is also on the cover page of the Daily Times newspaper. And
of course, that takes us to the end of our daily spotlight this morning, and of course, we'll go on a short time out, and when we come back, we'll be dwelling on some of the conversations we've had, but particularly we'll be having a special interview session with security expert Xavier Akpan, Executive Director, Combat Foundation for Justice and Peace Building. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Glad to welcome you back. This is Rise and Shine, and of course, it's about time for us to have that conversation with our security expert. The spate of insecurity in Nigeria seems to be on increase. Of course, we see different twists to the attacks by non-state actors on our security personnel, and it begs for so many questions that have been left unanswered. I know there have been conversations that the Nigerian military, to some extent, is compromised. I know when we began to open the doors for repentant terrorists to be, absorbed into the military force, there were a lot of questions, there were a lot of concerns raised by Nigerians. And some persons have said some of these repentant or so-called repentant, non-state actors who were brought into the Nigerian military responsible for some of the information that are being leaked. I mean, how do we get to explain the spates of attacks and ambush on armed personnel? How do they get the information that, the security forces are going to be headed in this direction, and then are able to plan an ambush and successfully carry it out? But of course, that's the conversations we'll be having on the state of Nigeria's security and the way forward. And our guest is none other than Xavier Akpan. Is also is the Executive Director, Combat Foundation for Justice and Peace Building. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine.
And thank you for having me.
How are you feeling this morning, and how does it feel to be a Nigerian this day?
Of course, Nigeria is not a country that you wake up and become too happy, because we have so many things that are happening that every right-thinking person will understand that there's nothing to be happy about in this country.
Okay, there's been a lot of spates of, attacks here and there in Nigeria as far as our security forces are concerned. How would you respond to these spates of attack and ambush?
Very, very unfortunate, and that we are even still having this kind of situation over 2 decades after returning to a civil democracy. And when you look at the issues of attacks on law enforcement agencies, I think the government should be blamed because as a result of unresolved cases of injustice in this world or in this part of the country, whenever you live in a country whereby there is disrespect to the rule of law, there is high degree of injustice. What you are seeing now is exactly what you get. Our government does not value justice. In fact, Nigerians generally, including myself, we look at justice as a very scarce commodity, rather than looking at it as one of the things that should be part and parcel of our daily living. When I talk about injustice at this point is that over the years, even before now, before 1999, we've been having cases whereby our armed police officers or armed security men are ambushed and killed. Nobody have ever find time to see to it that such issues are resolved and the perpetrators are brought to book. Nobody. So it becomes when there is what Robert P. called the broken window syndrome in crime prevention. When you have one window that is, you got the glass broken, and you don't do something about it, people feel that maybe you are in love with broken windows, so they keep breaking the windows. It is very, very unfortunate that we keep losing our younger brothers, our brothers who are also paid to do our job for us because we feel that, oh, that's the norm. It's not. Somebody should rise up and challenge the status quo. Now, look at what happened in Imo State recently, and the one of Enugu State and Anambra State this morning. Are we saying that those people that carry out the act are from the moon? The answer is no. So what is the way out of this? The way out now is that our security agencies, all security architecture in Nigeria should try to put in place a mechanism that will foster trust and confidence building. Because the people in the community where these things are happening, they have the information. But they are afraid. If they give this information to this law enforcement agency, will they manage it without a reprisal attack on them by these hoodlums? So a situation whereby our government, our law enforcement agencies are not capacitated to be able to have that public confidence and trust on them, we'll continue to be having all these things day in, day out. We have a lot of cases of unresolved murders in this country. Mashahari, Bola Ige, and all those things like that. When you live in a country whereby those situations continue to happen like that, and nobody is brought to book, most of those people that might have been funding or supporting these things are today VIPs in our political space. So, what do you expect? It is very unfortunate.
All right. Like you've said, it is quite unfortunate. And you mentioned something that has prompted me to ask. Do you believe the Nigeria security forces have what it takes to weed out the terrorists responsible for all of these attacks?
Honestly speaking, not even Nigerian security forces. Nigeria has what it takes to live in a harmonious environment that is devoid of any form of terrorism or banditry or criminality. The unfortunate thing that is happening to Nigeria is that we have neglected the advice of the late reggae maestro, Robert Nestor Mali. He said, until the philosophy that holds one race and another superior and another inferior is finally and permanently abandoned, everywhere will be war. As long as we continue to operate a class system where, sorry to use that word, the illiterates are the ones designing the policies for the literate ones to even suffer along the process, we can never get it right. Nigeria is a country whereby people are not patriotic. I can tell you now, even within the Nigerian police force, the Nigerian army, 85 to 90% of persons joining the Nigerian police are not joining it because of patriotism. They are joining it because that's the only place you can find a job. And that is why we end up having disgruntled elements within the system who are even also becoming a challenge. Like this issue that is happening, killing of all these personnel. Is it a spontaneous act? It's something that is well planned. And somebody had that information. But he doesn't trust the police to go and give them this information. He doesn't trust. And the worst of it all is that the government don't want to listen. It is very wrong for you to organize a synergized security structure between the police and the army, and you allow it to run up to 6 months without making a change. The army is not for internal security. The police is for internal security. And police is not for external the protection of the territorial integrity of this country. So when you brought in this synergized security structure in the name of joint task force, you should not allow them to cohabit beyond 3 months. Once that is done, there will be an opportunity for interest to arise. And nobody is doing the right thing. We talk about security. What do we mean by security? The greatest security in Nigeria today, as far as I'm concerned, is the public lack of confidence on the security system, so that they cannot even be able to volunteer useful information that will help them in proactively preventing most of these things. We only have a reactive security system, waiting for when it happens. Everybody will just go after that one. Nobody talks about. Look at recently, the DSS was telling us, oh, there's plan to attack the Abuja train again. Are we to run away? Why do we have the DSS? It's for intelligence. So what do? You don't need to come and give us this panic information. Since you have gotten the intelligence, design your intervention and make sure that nothing happens. And that's why we employ you. So all these things, as long as we are living in a country where people are not patriotic, the governors are not doing anything, we are having local government chairmen that are being roll call. We don't have a credible election. Imagine that even in the French colonies now, we have a bloodless coup. But in Nigeria election, you see so many people that will be being killed because of election. So the question now is, where are we going to? And which way Nigeria?
Okay. Now, you've raised some very salient questions and points. Where are we going and which way Nigeria? But before we get to asking that question, where are we going and which way Nigeria, let's look at the Nigerian security apparatus. For some time now, there have been conversations about, people within the ranks and files of the security forces being compromised. And that is one of the reasons where people say information about operations get out beforehand to non-state actors who now use this information to plot the ambush, such as the one we've seen in recent times. Do you think this assertion is true? And if so, what would you say can be done to change the narrative across our security forces?
Honestly speaking, earlier is evidence of non-patriotic involvement in state affairs, and the fact that a lot of persons are benefiting from the status quo, which they don't want to change. So, for me, when we talk about security in Nigeria, we should be able to define what we really want in terms of what is security. Security is not about somebody carrying an AK-47 and following you behind. No. That is status symbol. Security is the ability of the citizens to understand, to have a transparent and a system that make everybody to be on the same page. So, in a government, in a system whereby a whole lot of things and actions are being carried out in an opaque manner, with the special interest of a special group, we can never have security. We can never have security. So that's the problem.
All right, so welfare of Nigerian forces has been blamed for some of the decay in the system. I'd like to ask you if you agree.
The issue of welfare can never be met adequately because of corruption. I want to ask you one question. Tell me any Inspector General of Police from 1999 to today that left office without the corruption tap on them. Tell me. And you can imagine in a country like Nigeria, where even having past Inspector General of Police coming back to be at the Police Service Commission when it's supposed to be a civilian oversight agency. So all these things contribute to some of these things that we are talking about. I think it's only when God have mercy on us.
Okay, now that is going to take a long time. I mean, the mercies of God are very much available to all of us as we speak, but we no longer have to wait for that mercy.
We are not using it to the fullest.
All right, let's come back. The mercies of God, like you rightly said, is needed to change things, but that mercy is, What do you think the Nigerian government can do differently? Because asking that question, recall just after Ahmed Bola Tinubu took over office, he made changes in the ranks and files of the Nigerian armed forces across board, new security chief, new service chief, and all of these people came in talking tough with plans to change the narrative in terms of our security. Now, looking at the body language, looking at the first few things, the policy direction, the reshuffling that has been done within the security forces, do you think we are going to have anything different from what we've been experiencing in Nigeria?
The first thing we have to do as a priority now is that let us make issues and concern of justice a priority for all Nigeria. We should never be happy about any form of injustice, no matter who it is happening to. That's number one. Number two, we should, change the narrative. We should change the way we reason, the way we think, the way we do things in this country. We should look at issues of patriotism and make sure that every wrongdoer are properly brought to book in accordance with the law. In fact, in overall, we should institutionalize a mechanism that will make sure that respect for the rule of law is paramount in this country. If we do that, we will never get it back the way we are getting it now.
Okay, respect for the rule of law. So how is that going to be balanced where non-state actors seems to always be on the lookout to foment more trouble?
The question is who created the non-state actors? What is the condition? What is the reason why non-state actors are being created? It's as a result of the fact that some persons are not satisfied with the system. So they try to form their own intervention, which you call non-state actors. But if we have a system whereby equality is guaranteed, everybody have that sense of belonging, I don't think we will have non-state actors. Rather, we will have state actors that are working with non-state actors towards making the state viable and efficient and effective.
Okay, now just shortly before we allow you go today, let's come back to Akwa Ibom State. There have been conversations about our security, conversations about people crossing borders into the state. In the waterways, there's complaint about sea pirates across board. And it seems like, the state, especially as we're planning to celebrate our 36th anniversary, is not doing enough. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit as a security expert. What do you think can be done differently in the state to ensure that our waterways is safe and these pockets of insecurity, and particularly on our waterways, is being addressed holistically?
What to do in Nigeria, not only in Akwa Ibom State, is let us put in place a mechanism that will make the citizen to trust government. Nobody trusts our government. So I am telling you honestly, even at the waterways, we have this information concerning the hideout, the operational, the modus operandi of all these groups, but nobody is doing something about it because if you give the information to an average police officer, the information will get leaked. And before you know it becomes detrimental to the information source. So let us, in fact, the first thing we have to do now is we need to evaluate our sense and level of patriotism. We need to evaluate our sense and level of patriotism. We need to play down on the politics of my person dead here. We need to be more patriotic and ensure that we work together and make sure that we look at each other that we are humans. When we have that human feelings and that is devoid of political sentiment, religious beliefs and all those things, we'll be able to say, yes, we have started something and gradually we will be there.
All right, thank you very much for your contributions to the show this morning,
Thank you
Mr.
very much. I'm
Soji.
sorry, the interview, I've been very busy. I'm on my way. I'm just at the airport now to pass.
No problem. Quickly, before we let you go, we just want to know your advice to the government towards all of these concerns that you have raised this morning.
My advice to the government is let us do the right thing all the time. We are all governments. Nobody is more government than any other person. If you are governor, govern well. If you are local government chairman, be on your duty post. If you are a citizen, be on your duty post. If you are a trader, trade well, trade with a human sympathy. And once we do all these things, I think God is ever ready to help us.
Of course, God is ever ready to help us. Thank you so much. It's been quite very expository having this conversation with you. But we do look forward to having more when you're much settled. But we have to let you go. We appreciate you coming on Rise and Shine this morning.
Thank you very much.
Right, have a safe flight. Well, he has mentioned a lot of things that we have to agree with him this morning concerning the security of a nation, especially for the fact that he stated that it is not just in the hands of people who we call the government, but in our hands as well.
Well, I couldn't agree less. I mean, when it comes to security, when it comes to protecting ourselves, it comes down to what actions we are willing to take as individuals. Just earlier on when we had this conversation about the ambush in Imo State, I did say that there is no way people in a community would not know. At least 1 to 3 persons would have gotten information ahead of time that, you know, criminal elements were plotting X, Y, Z. But why did these people not come up with the information to the security agencies? And let's say, yes, like he is asserted, for you to keep a joint team together comprising the military and the police for that long period is completely against you know, security rules. It breaches. I know there was some point in Akwa Ibom that we used to have a Duma. You had a civil defense, a representative. You had the police. You had the army, and I think yes, just the 3 of them. Or I think at some point it brought in some other officials, and then these 4 security agencies were doing combined operations. And you'll always find each security vehicle you find, you'll see 4 different uniforms, 3 different uniforms, and you get to know that, okay, that different agencies of government, you know, being part of that patrol. But beyond forming the teams and having these special units, there's also a need to always recycle, because there's that conversation that when you keep, you know, certain people together for too long, if there is a mule in the midst of them, there are likely chances that informations are going to go out, and then you're going to, you know, jeopardize the life of other team members. But of course, one can never say what people can do and the extent they can go to, you know, enrich themselves at the detriment of others. So we can agree with Serpan this morning that for us to get to that point in Nigeria, the whistleblower policy, for instance, has not been working because of the fear that he has mentioned. Nigerians do not trust the security agencies. Even in Akwa Ibom State here, you get people, you know, telling you, why should I pick up my phone and, you know, snitch on a criminal element within my community, when somebody still within the ranks and files of the police force is going to go and tell that same person, let's say he's apprehended, he's going to tell that person while in police custody, this is the person that gave us the information that led to your arrest. And guess what that person is going to do when it comes out?
True.
You become the target. Your family becomes a target. So as long as we keep having these kinds of scenarios playing out, Nigerians are going to not trust the system. But when we get to a point where confidentiality, I know we do watch movies and they say, oh, it's the movies, but as far as, you know, cyber crimes is concerned, we've seen that witness protection is very critical, and the secrecy that is being, you know, given to people who come out to give informations, intels on secure criminal activities or gangs or a cartel that is involved in, you know, vices that should not be, that are against the law, is very high. So if the Nigerian government would want to have that level of collaboration, I know the Chief of Army Staff recently, during part of the engagement with media and the Nigerian people, have said they are looking forward to having that level of collaboration where the Nigerian people understand that security is not just about the armed forces presence, but also about what they can do. But for that to happen, the Nigerian people need to trust that when they walk up to security personnel, offer useful information, you know, that could lead to foiling criminal activities, their identity, that of their family, is not going to be exposed to these criminals themselves, and they're not going to become the target in the process of trying to do the right thing. When we get to that point, the Nigerian police force, the Nigerian army, the security forces are going to have a whole new level of engagement with the Nigerian people. I know that in Akwa Ibom State, there was an incident that the Akwa Ibom State Police spokesperson, DSP Odiko McDonald, said the police could not have quickly addressed the scenario and arrested the kidnappers, but not for the contributions of the community youths. Now, let's get it clear. Every community, the people in that community know the nook and crannies of their community more than the security forces. So when the people are the one taking you around, if a criminal person is entering here, they know 3, 4, 5 places, the likely places that person is going to bust out. And they're going to give you that intel. So it puts you way ahead of the criminal.